Welcome back, everyone. Marcelle and Joachim are here, and I dare say that Kim is around somewhere. Lead us off, Marcelle.
I'll put that down there.
Sure.
Right, okay. Good afternoon, everybody. We're pleased to see that at least some people are in the room to listen to Joachim and I and get some updates on what's been happening at FSC and on some of the things that we are focusing on. So thank you for that. My name is Marcelle Peuckert, as you would have seen in the program. I'm the Director of the Business Development Unit at the FSC International Center, and I'm primarily responsible for 4 program areas. These are not the technical program areas. My colleague Joachim, who many of you know, will be giving you an update on some of the work that the Policy and Standards Unit has been busy with. The 4 program areas that I represent in FSC are marketing, and we've heard a lot about that these past 2 days in the presentations that Etienne did and other people, so I'm not going to talk too much about the updates on that today. Smallholder support, I think we have touched on some smallholder issues in these days as well. The work with key accounts, so a program for how FSC engages with its key business partners, together with network partners, and trademark support. So how do we facilitate and make easy the use of the FSC trademarks? And particularly there, no difficult questions are allowed, because we know that the trademarks are sometimes not the easiest part of FSC for people to work with, and we're aware of that. So I'm just going to go, I don't have a lot of slides, I'm just going to go through some things that we've been working on. I think one of the things that we haven't actually done these 2 days is actually just give an update on where FSC actually is as a global organization in terms of facts and figures and numbers. We've talked a lot about many other things which are in our system, so I'm just going to run through some of these kind of just facts on what's happening in the system. So, oops, too fast. So this is just to show where FSC is situated in terms of our global presence, in terms of network partners. In 45 countries we have at the moment a presence. We have almost 800 members in over 70 countries. We're just over the 28,000 mark of certificate holders worldwide, and this is in 110 countries presently. We have 182 million hectares certified, and I think we're all in agreement that we know that there's still a lot of work to be done in terms of the area globally that we all need to get certified, that we're still really at a small percentage overall. FSC has actually seen a steady growth since its inception, but this is just a small snapshot to show you from 2009 to 2013 what has actually been the trend in terms of the growth of the FSC chain of custody certification. And so you can see that it's a pretty kind of steady growth year on year that we continue to see. Of course, it varies in different countries and in different markets. It's not the same, but this is the overall picture. We actually also, in terms of strategic focus and in terms of some of the work that we are focusing on, we look at areas where FSC is of course, important for us, where it's growing, which are the growing markets for us, where are the markets where we perhaps see a leveling out or even a small decline in the growth of FSC. But still, these are the top 10 countries in terms of chain of custody for FSC. And you can see in the very last column that there are some percentage changes which just show the growth in some of these particular markets, which I think is quite impressive for FSC when you look at countries like China and Italy and Brazil, where we really are seeing quite high numbers of growth in chain of custody. This is the forest certified area in FSC. So again, the same picture. We've just showing you a snapshot from 2009 to 2013. When this was, so we have 182 million hectares actually, but you can see that there's also been the same kind of a ratio of growth on the forest management side. Annually, we actually also reach out to certificate holders to actually ask them, what they think about FSC as a system, over and above these kind of forums or consultations or other ways in which we engage with our certificate holder community and business community. Our global survey every year speaks specifically to the certified companies, and we also try and get a sense of where people are in terms of what they see in their industry sectors as being demand for FSC, or why do they keep their FSC certification, what's important about FSC certification to them. Outside on the table, you will find some copies of the the 2012 Global Market Survey, which has a lot of information in it about what certificate holders think and what they said in the system. But I think generally from the 2012 survey, we saw that there was still the intention from most of the certificate holders to actually retain their FSC certificate, and that many of them had actually seen very many positive changes in terms of the demand for FSC products and materials in their particular industry. And we actually have normally quite a high percentage of people that actually participate in the survey, it's around 25%, which I think is actually an indication of how much certificate holders actually like to tell us what they're thinking about what's happening in the system. We're also doing work in the business development unit at understanding and working according to the different drivers, or what we perceive to be the different drivers for FSC certification. So there is, of course, today, and in this room, the past 2 days has been a lot with the private sector, but this is a very, very big driver, of course, for FSC, as we know, and has been the main driver for FSC in many, many, many different markets. And this is why it's a priority for us to have events like this, and why we have a program of key accounts and engagement with the corporate sector. We also, on the consumer side, and we talked a little bit about that, and Etienne was the first speaker, and she spoke a bit about consumers in the final frontier. I mean, still we know that consumers, in many places we don't have a high level of awareness of FSC, but we do see that in some places probably consumers are going to start playing more of a role, even though we don't see them as being a primary driver at the moment for FSC. Then there's, of course, the work that we do on public regulations and on legislation, sustainable public procurement, legality initiatives, and all of these, in the US particularly, in some markets, these have been very, very big drivers for the growth of FSC. And then, there's a number of reasons also that we try and understand why the private sector actually is such a big driver, and, what are the reasons behind why a company actually goes down the road of FSC certification. And, some of them, of course, I think we know it's, access to markets. This is also the message that we get from certificate holders in the global survey, for example. It's, securing long-term access to natural resources and securing supply chains, stakeholder pressure, NGO backing. We've talked a little bit about that in these 2 days, having Greenpeace here and with us. So a number of different reasons why companies would choose FSC, and sometimes a combination of those different reasons. So what are we doing at the moment? This is just a small snapshot of some of the things that we're doing to actually have a strong presence in various markets. So we're working on developing our FSC network globally. We have, in the past 2 years, 3 years, 2 years, we've established and re-established in some places, 5 regional offices around the world. We're strengthening our network partners in many areas with specific focuses on some of our growth markets, or where we know we need to be strategically in those markets, like Indonesia or in China. We're funding and working with projects together with network partners in other key markets, such as Japan. In Latin America, we have a very big market development project working with a number of different countries, in Poland, Russia, US. We're building a database at the moment of trying to understand, what kind of preference procurement policies do FSC companies out there have. Our colleagues in the US have already done this work, and we're doing it now internationally. So this will help us kind of know who we need to be engaging with and keep track of what the trends are in terms of FSC procurement policies and preferences for FSC. Market intelligence and understanding the trends in general of different industry sectors or what's happening is a real challenge for us. I think there's a lot of information out there, and we're trying to build a framework around what is it that we can take from our own information. We have a database with 28,000 certificate holders. There's a lot of information in there. What do we take out of that we can actually use to help inform strategic decision making and to understand what's happening in different industry sectors? And then also we're looking outside of that. There's a lot of external information, and what do certificate holders have in their hands, or what's in the public domain that can help us understand. But it's a very, very big field, so we're starting quite small and kind of quite targeted to see what we can start to learn about what's happening in different areas. We have at the moment a strategy in place for working with our key business partners. We are now in the process of going the next step in actually drafting a more advanced strategy which will focus on some partnership models and expanded interaction and collaboration with some of our key business partners too. On communications, I think we've focused a lot the past year on managing crisis communications, also being proactive in many areas in terms of our communication, not just waiting for things to come at us and then, oh, we have to react to that, but trying to be proactive in communicating on various issues around FSC. We have a process at the moment on a motion from the last General Assembly, which is around strengthening our financial flows and the organization of FSC as a whole, so we're working on that. We're doing a lot in terms of, and linked to what Etienne had talked about in terms of our work now on the brand positioning and on the consumer side. We're actually developing some promotional and marketing tools which will speak to different parts of the FSC system. We have a campaign for the first time. We'll be launching it shortly, so what you're seeing is a kind of just snapshot of what is not in the public domain yet. But this is designed to support the visibility of smallholders in the market. So that's going to be launched pretty soon, and it's in the form of a marketing toolkit that retailers will be able to use to accompany smallholder products in the retail sector. We realize that by just putting a different label on it is not necessarily going to make it sell, and we need to be telling those stories. I think this is also a theme that's come up in the last day and a half, that as I've been listening to the discussions here about the stories that FSC has that it needs to be telling. We have other campaigns. I'm just going to highlight one, which is a campaign to actually promote the use of FSC certified materials over competing products. So, you know, what are the reasons why you should choose wood? And we actually have done a series of case studies and a very nice online tool and resource that's downloadable, which anybody can really use in terms of wanting to promote why to use FSC certified material in a particular industry sector. We've also taken it wider than just general, but why is it important in a particular sector like retail or construction or packaging, for example? We have the FSC Marketplace, which is an online tool which is going to also be launched before the end of this year, which is also designed at better matching supply and demand, and actually offering our certificate holders an opportunity to be able to talk more in a marketing sense, in a promotional sense about their products and materials, not just in the technical sense, which is what at the moment what we've had in our database, but offering them the opportunity to build a profile for themselves, as it were, about their products. And the global brand positioning, which Etienne talked a little bit about, and I'll just say a few more words. So this is just a snapshot of what we're doing with the Made with Heart campaign, which is the campaign to accompany the smallholder products in the market. And this is the first time also that we really go into the consumer side and develop a small consumer website, consumer-facing website. So there's the side for consumers if they want to know more about the products or about FSC and where they come from. And then there's the side for retailers, which is for a retailer to be able to build the campaign that they're going to use in store to distinguish the products. This is the Choose FSC Certified Wood and Paper campaign that I just spoke about, and this is going to be online soon. And you'll be able to, as I said, you'll be able to just download and use different parts of it, and we hope that you'll find this valuable resource. The Marketplace, which I talked about, this is going to be launched before the end of this year. And then just finally, just a little bit more information on the brand positioning. So we've just actually done the research, the quantitative research in 11 markets it was, and Etienne gave you the figures. I think it was just over 9,000 people that we actually surveyed. And actually this afternoon, when we finished here, we're going, a group of us, of staff and network partners are going into a 3-hour meeting to actually, for the first time, see the results from that brand positioning. So for the first time, as a global organization, we will know what consumers really think, what FSC's messaging should be, and what our brand positioning is. So this is really very exciting for us. Then there will be another round of research, and then, of course, the creative adaptation of that brand positioning and what we've learned from this into marketing, advertising, facing material that we will be rolling out in the next months with key partners. And, of course, it's not only that we'll learn about the brand positioning, but we'll also learn a lot of other things about consumer insights, about how FSC is viewed with respect to other organizations, and some of the other things that Etienne already spoke about in her first, in the first presentation that she gave. So from my side, that's really all. The last thing I wanted to mention was, and it has been said here, is that FSC will have a General Assembly next year. It will be in Seville in Spain from the 7th to the 14th of September. It's also the 20th anniversary year of FSC. Outside on the table, we have prepared a very nice document on promoting corporate engagement with the GA, and outside on the table you will find some copies of those. But we look forward to working with you in the next weeks and months as we build the program for the GA, as we work with partners to include them in the program for the GA. So watch the space. There will be the GA website coming soon, and a lot of information that will be coming out about what's actually going to happen at the GA next year. So thank you for your attention and time, and I will hand over now to Joachim to give you some updates on some of the work that's been happening in PSU, in the Policy and Standards Unit.
Thanks, and we'll take some questions to both of them at the end, I guess.
Hello, everybody. I will do it the old style. I think these things look nice on women, but I don't feel like looking like Lady Gaga or something here in front of you. And I would also like to thank Ben & Jerry's for this nice ice cream experience. I have to admit this was my first Ben & Jerry's, and I really enjoyed it. And it's great to see there are still so many techies in this room who are interested in technical updates, and this is really fascinating, because it's a fascinating issue, at least for us in PSU. My name is Joachim Droste. I'm the head of PSU and Policy and Standards Units. We are the folks who are writing all the standards, but we don't bring our own ideas into the standards. We bring your ideas into the standards. We transfer your wishes and your requests into normative requirements that then our CBs and our certificate holders have to comply to. And I want to quickly give you an update on the main developments that we have in our program, in the forest management side and in the chain of custody side. And you may not find everything here. We have a huge program. You know, we have now 15 people working in PSU, and all the people around the world in the national offices who are also dedicated to our work. So this is just a snapshot and a small focus of the major things we are doing at the moment. You may remember that we had this painful process over the last couple of years to develop a new document, a new set of principles and criteria. And this document introduced some new or expanded concepts which have not been included in the previous version. One major change is that the Principle 1 is now aligned with the requirements of the EU Timber Regulation and the Lacey Act, which was very essential for us to ensure that FSC is compliant with these legal verification systems. We also have expanded on the concept of free prior informed consent. So if you go into an area as a forest manager, you need, of course, to have the consent of the people living there, or owning that land, or having traditional or customary use rights. We have a new concept of living wages, social management planning, and we have expanded on the requirements on stakeholder engagement. This standard is not yet in effect. It's published and it's approved, but there was a decision by the board that it only becomes effective as soon as the indicators are developed around this, and this is a process I will show you in a second, which is ongoing. But for all these things that are new here, we try also to develop tools and guidelines, and you may have heard that we do a series of field tests for this FPIC concept around the world. So we try to help and support you in implementing these new ideas and new concepts that have been developed. So this is this famous IGI process, International Generic Indicators, where we now try to develop the indicators to the principles and criteria. And only together with the indicators, the principles and criteria become auditable and are that set of requirements that make it the forest management stewardship standard. And it also specifies and defines in a very detailed way FSC's vision of responsible forest management. And it constitutes the auditable elements that the certification bodies use if they go out into the forest to measure the performance of the forest manager. And it's also the starting point for those guys who develop national standards in their countries. So this is a very essential process. We have the next meeting, the fourth meeting of this working group in 2 weeks in Lisbon. And the first draft was already out for consultation. We got a lot of feedback from you guys and from other stakeholders. There were still this perception is a lot of new things, too many indicators, very complicated. So we now in the second revision try to improve on that. And we will try to bring it out towards the end of this year for a second round of public consultation. And please look out for that. We need your comments. Then we are working on something which is a bit new, a new concept. It's around safeguards to ensure the credibility and the quality of certification in high-risk areas. And this is something which we are still in a very early stage. The idea behind this is that there are countries where apparently certification can be a tool to improve, but in order to go there, there need to be certain preconditions fulfilled. There must be a kind of environment that allows credible certification to be implemented. And this could be very simple things like civil wars or other things which prohibit us to go into an area, but it could also be the lack of civil society, so that it's absolutely impossible for us to implement a credible stakeholder process. And transparency and stakeholder engagement is one of our key assets, as you know. So we try to look into this. What can we do to prepare a country before we go? And this reminds me always on Star Trek, on colonizing planets. How can we prepare a country to be ready for certification? And if we go there, if a situation allows us to go there and there are still high risks, then we still need to define what that means in detail. What are the safeguards we need to put around this process so that we can have a credible certification operation on the ground? So we have this pre-certification phase, then this pre-assessment phase, and the certification phase where we still need to identify what are the risks, what are the impacts of the risk, and what can we as FSC do to get our certification on the ground in a credible way. Then we do some fascinating projects which are financed by the European Space Agency. For a couple of years already, we are now in the second project phase. And it will run until the end of next year, where we see how we can utilize Earth observation technologies. And this project is mainly focusing on satellite data. How can we use really actual satellite data? And they are today available almost on a monthly basis in a very high resolution for a very moderate price or even for free. How can we use this data to make our auditing process more robust, our system more transparent, and through this also the whole certification process more credible? And this is also a fascinating process and project, and we have a dedicated website to that. So if you go to our website, you will find a link to this project. Then we have a new approach to certify ecosystem services. As you know, FSC is traditionally more looking on forest products, sometimes a little bit on these NTFPs like seeds or other things, but we are not very good in certifying other services which are more non-monetary, like water protection or conservation or carbon even, where you could argue that this is already somehow linked to some new finance mechanisms. And we are now also getting demands to look into biomass and bioenergy. We have a whole project team working on this, and we try to get, within the next 2 or 3 years, some indicators and the system up to speed to really offer this as a new service, together with the IGIs and the principles and criteria to get this service certified. So now, coming to chain of custody, we have several projects running in the chain of custody world. The first one is that we have aligned our group and multi-site standard. And this will go out for approval in early next year. Then we have a study on pre-consumer reclaimed material, which is under public consultation. And the public consultation will go out until 15th of December 2013. We have also a revision of our main chain of custody standard. And this is supposed to improve, excuse me. This is supposed to improve the overall accessibility of the standard, including the credit system and the overall concept. Then we did some fixes to comply our system with the EUTR requirements, which is mainly simplified sourcing of co-products, the pre-consumer reclaimed wood gap. We require species and country of harvest information. We provide access to information. The phase-out of minor components was a requirement because this is a gap in our system, which did not allow us to ensure that these products are controlled or certified. And of course, we had to introduce the compliance mechanism with trade and custom laws, which was so far not addressed in our system. And we had a very big project on controlled wood, which is currently under revision. And you know, this is a response to the motion 51 from the last General Assembly. And the first thing we had to do, because it's a major gap in our system, is defining what is our controlled wood strategy. Of course, it's very difficult to create a system around a whole new concept if there is a lack of a strategy on what do we really want to do with controlled wood and what are the safeguards around this and the future plans for controlled wood. So there is still a kind of unknown of where do we want to go in future with controlled wood. And so we agreed with the technical committee, which is currently working, that we look first on a kind of midterm review, which is, let's say, for 10 years, to agree that at least for a period of 10 years, we need controlled wood and that it's worth to invest into this system. Because the requirements that the committee is proposing on the new national risk assessments are fairly expensive, and it demands a lot from our companies, because the plan is that we phase out company risk assessments by the end of next year. So this, of course, puts a lot of pressure on us as FSC to deliver national risk assessments for all countries around the world, so that you have an option to source this material from countries where no certification has been taking place so far. And we have recently brought out our revised controlled wood standard for public consultation. You may have seen that. It was about 2 weeks ago. And it's the main chain of custody controlled wood standard and the controlled wood standard for forest management certification. And the major changes in this is that if you have to stop using your company risk assessments, there are basically 3 options that the control committee is proposing. One is to go through a decision tree with control measures. The other one is to require a controlled wood assessment by a third party. Or what we have also in the system, a full certification process according to our controlled wood FM standard, which is standard 30010. So this was it, and I'm losing a bit my breath here because I tried to rush through this maybe a bit too fast. And John, please, let's go to the question round. Thanks.
Let's do it. I'm tempted to say, is that all?
This is really dangerous. Would not meet our health and safety requirements.
Questions to this? Do we have our microphone propellants? We need it. Oh. You'll be the microphone propellant. Yes, it's there.
Thank you very much. My name is Lone Nielsen. I come from the Velux Group. We produce roof windows based on wood, pine wood. I would like to raise a question for both of you. I noticed that you would like to understand the industry. That's very positive for us. And I would also like to know a bit more about the chain of custody standard. We have worked with sustainability for many years. We source chain of custody wood. 95% of what we source is either PFC or FSC. We need both schemes because we produce throughout Europe in 13 different places, and for us it does not make sense to move wood from country to country. There's no sustainability in that. This is also why we need a standard, an FSC standard with a credit account set up. We have been in the pilot testing of the FSC credit account and had hoped very much that it would come into force and put into the standard. So I would like to know what are the future for that?
Yeah, maybe as a background for those who have not been involved in this process, I mean, we have a credit system in our current chain of custody standard, which requires the company to have a credit at the level of the single site. And what you're referring to is our cross-site credit model, where we can move credits from one site to another, which has been tested over the past 2 years. We had presented the results of this test to the last board meeting, and the board decided that this test is now over, and that the test results will feed into the revision of our core FSC standard, which is now almost ready for the first round of public consultation. It should go out within the next, I would say, 4 to 6 weeks. And there we will present this as an option to our stakeholders. And the reason why we do this is there is a lot of different opinions about this model in our system. And it's really not very close together. It really ranges from one extreme for the system to the other extreme against the system. And we really need now feedback from our system, from the stakeholders through the consultation process. What does the majority of people think about this? And what would be the conditions under which we could set up such a system that also would make those people feel comfortable who are critical about this system? So this is a timeline. It will go now in parallel with our revision process of our main chain of custody standard.
Thank you for that. So.
Good afternoon. My name is Ulrich Leberle, Confederation of European Paper Industries. My question to Joachim Droste was about the work on bioenergy and biomass. When do you expect tangible results of that working group on biomass and bioenergy? Because it's a very important issue to ensure a level playing field between products and energy that is made out of the same raw material, where the products increasingly have to show all the pedigree of where the raw materials comes from, and through the traceability we have discussed that this morning, whereas green energy based on biomass is just green. And since member states and European Union are very hesitant of going towards mandatory sustainability criteria, all the more it is important that this vacuum is filled by voluntary schemes, we believe. And that's why we think this development in FSC is very good, and we should be knowing a bit more about it on further occasions. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, if I had more to explain already about this, I would have done so, because we also just started more or less with it. I mean, we have done our first analysis, which led us to the conclusion that at the forest management side, we are already more or less prepared, because you have to comply with the same set of environmental, social and economic safeguards like for any other production of timber. But when it comes to the chain of custody, and especially when the material is transferred into energy, this is something where we have zero experience at the moment, because it would be like a virtual product that is then traded like eco energy at the moment. And this is something we still need to analyze, and we have not decided yet on who would be in the working group and how would be the process. But we are very happy to invite everybody who has already experience maybe in this or is interested in this to help us developing this system.
We don't have to take questions.
Well, it's too late to say good morning, so good afternoon. So Udo Felten is my name. I'm working with SIG, and SIG is also very heavily involved in some standardization things, and it's great to see that ecosystem services are addressed by FSC International. The question is, there are more ecosystem services addressed by standard developments like water. It's not only carbon, and also biodiversity. How is FSC International addressing that, and is it included further on in the working group? And it would be good to understand the strategic setup of that ecosystem services for the future. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the project we have, this Forces project, and I would repeat my invitation to look at the Forces project website, where you can also see in which locations around the world and which partners we are doing this. I mean, they focus primarily on conservation and protected areas. But carbon is also in the focus of the Ecosystem Services Program, and you know that we have this partnership with the Golden Standard, because there are things which we cannot deliver and we don't want to get engaged in, and this is this whole issue of carbon accounting. And if you look into, I think even the first draft of the IGIs included already some links to carbon, that as a forest management operation you have to measure your carbon or monitor your carbon, so that you demonstrate that there is no depletion in carbon through your interventions. So there are some services we look into. Water is not so much in the focus at the moment, but this does not mean that we cannot look into this in the future. If there is a demand from our stakeholders and our members that we should do that, we'll do that.
We have brochures outside. Brochures outside, apparently. Andreas.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I'm sitting on the Control Wood Technical Committee, and you touched upon one of our the things that we have put into this new system for control wood, which is out now for consultation. One of the requirements here is that a prerequisite is to have national risk assessments that will specify the risk. And this is going to be a bottleneck. So it would be interesting to hear, I mean, assuming that this standard, this proposal will go through, how does FSC see the process of getting these NRAs up and running and done before we come to the end of 2014?
I mean, to be honest, we see this critical, because the process, I mean, it's still not finished, the description and the frame of this new process. So most of our national offices are in a waiting pattern at the moment, because they want to see first what is the final process we need to do before they want to start. And if we get this final process even done by early next year or middle next year, we just have 6 months left to implement it. So it's very clear that this puts a lot of burden on us and a lot of headaches, creates a lot of headaches to us as well. Because we already did some outreach with the national offices, and they will not be able to deliver on a coverage that you would probably expect to deliver national risk assessments by the end of next year. So having said that, I think the working group or the technical committee is also recognizing this challenge. And this is why they proposed one option in the standard as a kind of interim measure. So you can do still a process, and for those techies who know that, compared to the current Annex 3 process, in a situation where there's no national risk assessment. And of course, you could argue that this is already much more expensive and much more burdensome than the Annex 2 process, which will go away. But at least there is a kind of bridge built into the system to take account of that. I'm not sure what will be the strategic consequences. Of course, it's our responsibility to also inform our decision makers about this problem. And then we need to see how they evaluate the situation and if they come up with some potential solutions for that.
Thanks. Andrew.
Hi, sorry, it's Andrew again. Just a quick question. On your slide, you mentioned OCP implementation advice notes. Can you just tell us a bit more about that, please?
Yes, I skipped that because after the discussions we had here yesterday and today, this was an advice note that we prepared that was supposed to come out in the next couple of days to set the starting points for the different steps that Phil presented for registering, connecting, and then start using the system. I'm not sure if Phil is still here. Otherwise, I mean, we have now reconsidered this, and this advice note at the moment is on hold, and we will reconsider these starting points.
At the GA, there was motion 35 criticized very heavily the use of advice notes. So why is such a major why are you considering bringing such a major change using advice notes?
Yeah, we had some internal discussion if we should use advice notes for this or not, but then we couldn't find another rapid response instrument that we could use to set these starting dates, because it's, as you know, it's not a single standard revision that would be necessary, because the whole system has to start using it, including the forest managers and the control wood guys and the chain of custody guys. So it would require at least standard revisions to set these starting points in. And then we said it's easier to have one advice note where we cover all these three groups and do this as an exception, which would, of course, have board approval under this.
So motion 35 said, advice notes shall be discontinued. They are not advice, they are regulatory policy. That was voted on in the General Assembly.
Yes, but in this case, the board has overruled the motion. When we presented the proposal of this procedure, the outcome of motion 35 to the board, we came to an agreement that for a period of 2 years, we tried to minimize or even avoid the use of advice notes. But they were very concerned that we would lose a rapid response tool, which has already been proven now with the EUTR, for example, that we need something like that in the case of emergencies. So in 2 years, I will report to the board which were the situations where we had to use or wanted to use an advice note, and then make a recommendation if we should keep it in the system or not.
So should we vote on it again next time?
I mean, as you know, policy motions are recommendations to the board, and it's at the discretion of the board to take a decision also to change what a motion requests. And we have many other cases where this happens if they believe it's to the good of the organization.
Thanks. I shall be in Seville in 2014. I look forward to it. Coming around again, yes. Those people who are going to the forest are going to have eaten by 1:15. I just wanted to remind you of that.
I'll keep that in mind. It's Susan from Mondi again. Marcelle, just a quick question to you about the campaign that you said using FSC certified paper and pulp products, I think. When that is going to get started and which countries that's going to be focused on. And then I also had a quick question to your colleague about the EU timber regulation and the changes you've made to the standard. That still doesn't change, at the end of the day, the fact that the EU, that FSC certified products are not going to be considered green lane products, correct? Short question.
Okay. So it's not a campaign that we're going to be rolling out in particular countries because it's an online tool that can be used by anybody, really. So there's a website. There is also a printable version of a document that you can use as if you wanted to, and then you can download different aspects of it online, and there's infographics and other parts of it. So really, we'll be launching it as wide as possible, and then anybody would be able to use it in any market or in any situation. That's the intention. Of course, we will do some targeted work with it, but it's not. That's the intention behind it.
When?
Well, in the next. I'm looking at Julian because he's leading the work on that project, but I think in the next 2 weeks. But we'll send out an announcement about it officially, and with the website address and everything.
Yeah, maybe one comment on the EUTR. I mean, we knew from the beginning, and this is of course no surprise now to us, that the European Commission is not endorsing any voluntary certification system, because they made it very clear from the beginning that they are not going to do that. But on the other hand, they also launched an implementing act where they made very clear what kind of voluntary systems a company could accept as a mitigation measure, and they defined several criteria of what such a system has to fulfill. And we made some analysis, and we have published that we are compliant with these 4 criteria. And we also did analysis, which is available also on our webpage, by John Hontele. I'm not sure if he's still around, my colleague, how a company can use FSC, both full certification and controlled vote certification, as a mitigation measure where they identify high risk, so they can come to the conclusion of negligible risk according to the EUTR system. And we have some monitoring organizations now in Europe, and Peter, who is just listening to me, I think is the first, NEPCON is the first monitoring organization approved in Europe. And of course, monitoring organizations, especially if they are at the same time also FSC certification bodies, and they are consulting the companies on mitigation measures, it's our hope that they will be a kind of communicator also for our system to convince companies to buy FSC to reduce the risk of illegality.
Okay, thank you. I think we're done. Lower.